Welcome to Nerdities. Bitches.
No topic too absurd, no statement too asinine, no question too interesting. That's right, folks, it's your patented Nerds interview show. I'm Mike.
I'm Justin.
I'm Joe.
And our guest tonight is Philip Tarl Denson. I got that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
3-word names can be tricky. They don't always roll off.
Especially when the middle name is completely made up. I don't know where that came from.
Your parents pull that out of thin air?
Yeah, I think my dad was allowed to give the middle name, and I think there might be an old sci-fi book with a Tarl. Maybe it's got a different spelling in it. So yeah, he just found something.
That definitely sounds fantasy. Like, Tarl could pop up in sci-fi. That sounds like an alien, but that could be anybody in a fantasy story.
I'll take it.
So, the title of your book is Future Tales, and the breakdown I read is pretty interesting, but I don't want to paraphrase here, so I'll hand it off to you to describe it to folks.
So Future Tales is a reimagining of classic fairy tales, but set in a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk world. So many years ago, I had this idea. I kind of just connected some dots from fairy tales, like, the wolf or the woods, and they kind of created this shared universe. I was like, they all kind of happen in the same European vibe. And then I just went from there and made it into one shared universe where all the stories are actually happening at the same time or back to back, and the characters interweave, and it actually creates one full story with all these classic fairy tale characters coming together in the final chapter, Avengers style, to beat the big bad wolf.
So is it takes on their original stories that will weave together, or is it a completely fresh take using their archetypes and maybe elements of what their story usually is?
Each chapter focuses on their story. So Little Red Riding Hood story, we have Red. She's a rider, which is someone who goes between the underground cities in this destroyed future post-apocalyptic city, delivering messages. And she's got a hood, a holographic ordnance object device which she can create holograms with, and they're trying to avoid the wolf, which is the World Order Liberation Force, which has taken over this place, and they have this floating city which links back into the Jack and the Beanstalk story, where in his chapter it's the Jack and the Beanstalk story. He goes up into the clouds, gets his golden egg. So every chapter is their story. It just happens to be telling a bigger story altogether, and it interweaves, and they show up in each other's chapters here and there, and until they all come together.
That does seem like a fun way to write, to look at a classic structure for a story and say, okay, here's the rises and the falls, but what can I change in there to get that roller coaster to go the same way? How can I sci-fi up fantasy?
Exactly, and that's the kind of fun and challenge for me. Like, when we first came up for this was just for an anthology. We just weren't going to do 10 pages, and that's why I was like, I want to do this thing where I know every 10 pages can tell its own story, but also be leading into a bigger story. And the interweaving nature of it is what actually appeals to me. I'm a screenwriter by trade, and that's what I work in film and TV mainly. So working in this, it just allowed me to kind of have a little bit more play, work in a world where it doesn't matter the cost on screen, because it's just going to cost the same with the artist or if I'm doing the art. And I got to work with some amazing artists too. I don't know if the book... And look at that gold.
There it is. Yeah, we're getting parts of it. And the good parts.
Yeah.
So I had 3 questions there. It was one of those times where you're throwing stuff out and I'm like, I could tag onto that. I could tag onto that. And then most of them just disappeared. So I'll go with one of the ones I've written down. And you have 10 different sections, so it's 10 different artists. So did you have one of them design the aesthetic, or do they each come at it from their own way? Because I kind of like to have things to have a connected visual framework. I guess you used to say everyone has a different way to say it. Was it like that, or does everyone have pretty much free reign?
No, the characters were designed. I did a bit of work. Raymond Augustus, who was probably my main go-to guy, did some design work early on. Some of the characters which were just showed up in their chapter, say the Cinderella chapter that was by Silvia Ferrero from Brazil, I said, hey, you make this character yours, because all of them would have a description that I had, and I get pretty detailed about, her robot leg, how I want to see it, and we have some back and forth. But I also wanted the artists to bring their cultural stuff into it. So Sleeping Beauty, which was made by a Nigerian artist, he brought that Nigerian flavor into it and made her Nigerian. And, Cinderella was Brazilian, and the two kids in the Hansel and Gretel story are Filipino, because that's the artist. So we had different artists from France all the way to, Morocco. Like, there was just different artists around, and they got to bring their flavor to their own character. But there's a visual design that goes through it, and the characters, they have to have a certain look that you can take. Like, if there's a robot arm, it has to be the same robot arm. It can't be, change out, all that sort of stuff.
You need that kind of Bible that everyone works off of. Did you intentionally go international with it, or was that just how everything fell out? Like, how you just happened to get people from a bunch of different countries?
Well, it started just with one chapter in an anthology, which may not have gone anywhere. This is with Wild North Comics. And then, because that kind of kicked off and we kept doing more and more anthologies, it started going to the point where I found some more artists around, and it probably was about chapter 2 where I decided, okay, this is what's going to happen. I'm not going to use the same artist for each one. The fact that fairy tales are universal. They're all around the world, and any people I talk to, and I travel a lot too, we know these classic fairy tales. They may not be the local folk tales, but the classic European fairy tales have just, taken over. Everyone knows these stories. They're iconic. So I like the idea of that and how the international element allows us to explore them in different ways. So it was pretty early on in the stage that it became, this is what we're going to do, and it's going to be a bit of a feature of what we're doing.
Kind of reminds me, there's an HBO show, Tales for Every Language or something, where it was people from across the world telling the classic stories, but in a very cartoony way. So yeah, you look at that and then sci-fi it up. I noticed on the Amazon listing, ages 7 or older was recommended. Is that a randomized thing, or would you say that this 7 or older is a good choice?
Probably, yeah. I've got a young kid who's 8 years old, and he was all over it. There's nothing untoward in these books, but it also appeals to, I wrote it because I love the cyberpunk and the post-apocalyptic world, as well as the design of the stories and how the challenge of that. But there's nothing untoward. We didn't go too sexy. But, there was some of the artists wanted to, and there was some art they threw in that I was like, maybe we'll save that for another time. But for this one, it is an all ages book, and that's the design, partly because of the fairy tale element.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if Amazon just slapped that on there willy-nilly, or if it actually does clear that age range. So when you're writing for screen, either or, and writing for comics, is there a difference in the structure of the way you write the stories? Not just like, I can go above and beyond because an artist could draw this much cheaper, but is there a difference in the way you lay it out to describe it to a comic book artist, or is it basically just the same structure?
Oh no, I actually think it's quite different. So I've got a script with Ridley Scott, his company, Sci-Fi Script. I've had a script with Eric Heiser, who wrote Arrival, and a few other bigger names. I got a phone call from Ron Howard back in 2019 to develop a sci-fi TV series.
Dropping names.
And we actually had that with Legendary for a bit there too, just during the whole pandemic, so we won't go into that. But like those sort of things, you're writing. There's a real sophistication. Obviously, you need to write for the film, but you need to really sell it on the page and get that mood across. So it's actually it's a creative process. Whereas I would say in the comic book, I get a lot more into the mechanics. I explain what I like about the panel, what the panel could be sometimes. I get into a lot of detail which I wouldn't really describe in a screenplay. So it's somewhere between prose, like novel writing, and screenplay writing. But, other artists, they read that too, and they can get the idea, and then they go with their gut and come up with something that I would never have thought about. And I love that collaboration process. Artists are amazing, and I couldn't give them enough credit for this book.
Do you get to communicate with the artists much during the process, or do you just hand it off and hope for the best?
No, we do keep a communication open. My whole thing is, once they're on board, I give them the script, I give them a breakdown, I also give them a bit of a layout. Sometimes I have my idea of what the layout is per page. Plus, I'll give them reference images, either from previous chapters where we've already got the design for the character, or from online and things that I've had in the back pocket for years. Even my own drawings, I'll give references of what I would like to be, but always with the caveat that, please, if you think you've got something better, you go crazy. And giving them that freedom, weighed up with the safety net of all the material I give them, I think allows for a real good collaboration.
Okay. Now, with every IP out there, I just switched to the word IP because I'm about to ask a question about it becoming other things. Is the notion of something, if something like this hits, is the notion of it becoming something bigger scary, or is it the direction you'd want to go with it, or is it not even in your head?
To be honest, it was sort of baked in. There was a bit there where this could be IP for something. So as a screenwriter, most of my work in the last 5 years has been paid work for other people that doesn't get made. And that's fine. I'm a working screenwriter. I love doing that. I pop into writers' rooms, or I do my own feature films or other people's features. So there was something really beautiful about having a product that goes straight to the audience and that it's there, it exists. However, it could be something else. And as you guys would know, the market is all IP based. If you have something, a book, a comic, a game, these things are being adapted quite readily. In fact, more so than some of the original ideas. You'll have people say, oh, is it based on IP? Even if it's not published yet, they prefer that, which is a little bit strange. But I understand, as long as there's an audience there, they feel like, great, we can sell this. And for something like this, it was in the back of my brain. I do love the anthologies like Love, Death and Robots.
I love that show. Oh, man. How effective. How different is each episode.
And there's an element that, different studio making those different... they're completely different universes. They're different worlds. Whereas ours is all set in the same world, so it'll be interesting how we do that. But I'm a big animation fan as well. We've got pitching some animation at the moment. So, there's always in the back of my mind what this could be. And there's very early days of pitching this to buyers as well.
That leads me to another question. For Joe said he has one. If this were to go to something like animated, would you want a consistent art style there, or would you want it to be something like Love, Death, and Robots, where everyone gets their own feel to it? Like that Star Wars Visions that they put out not too long ago, that was a good example of it too.
I think that's a great example. I love that, what if... the Marvel What If, or the blue-eyed samurai look. But I also love traditional 2D, and I also love really high-class 3D animation. So my gut would be, I like the idea of using different studios around the world, sort of like we did with the artists, to bring their take on it. But there would have to be a steady design throughout, which we wouldn't want that to subtract from the animators and what they do. So it's just a discussion to be had with the producers and executives if we're lucky enough to go down that road.
Yeah, one of those unfortunate conversations you might have to have one day. Joe, throw it out.
Philip, I know the Future Tales is with Wild North Comics, but could you tell me about your comic company, Outlaw?
Yeah, so I actually started Wild North Comics with the team, but because I've got my own company, and because this was our first cab off the rank, so to speak, as a bit of a test for a standalone comic rather than our anthology, I just ran with it. So I use my own company, Outlaw, Outlore. So lore being like, the mythos and, stories and world building. We actually are planning to do a lot more with that label, Outlaw Games, including online stuff as well. Outlaw Comics, and in my film and TV world as well. So this is the first of many. That being said, Wild North, we've still got a lot of stuff coming out. There's some really great comics already out there, or there's some Kickstarters planned, and some more exciting things coming your way.
I like it. You have your hand in everything. In a year from now, I might be playing your game on Steam.
Oh, mogling, Joe. He's mogling.
I love it.
Not on a mountain, different kind of mogling.
I like mogling as a verb. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Philip, I'd like to ask every time we get someone new on the show, what's your go-to stuff? What sparks your flame, if you will?
That's great. I think I have, I also write like solid, just like dramas and I like that stuff, but I'll always go to the genre stuff. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy. I'm attracted to that. And from a young age, I was reading like Philip K. Dick. So that kind of storytelling and reality bending stuff I love. But then an animation, I just saw Transformers 1 the other day. And, the first Transformers movie, the animated movie from the 80s, was one of the first stories, like together with maybe Indiana Jones and Star Wars, which just really sparked this thing in me. That storytelling is a thing that can really, change your outlook. And I was impressed with Transformers 1. That was a fun animated feature. Just that I don't know if it's out there yet. I'm sure it's out in the US.
Yeah.
I was just reading an article how it's not doing that great money-wise, but I gotta say, when it was announced, I wasn't that interested. And then you start seeing more of it, like, you know what? This is a rare occurrence where more trailers is making this more interesting.
Yeah, that's same. I felt the same. I lost, no offense to Michael Bay and everything, but I lost a little bit of interest. I got a bit hurt by, I was one of those guys where, Optimus Prime, he doesn't have a mouth, he's got a shield. Like those sort of things. Or the truck, he was like a flat-nosed.
Yeah.
But that's all right. These movies are fun and all that. So something about this one sparked that original love from the animated series when I was a little kid, which just, word of mouth might help it go better. But I loved it. I think it did really well. But it's just to answer the question then, Justin, it's sci-fi. Mainly it's sci-fi. I could say all the other ones and talk about the horrors that I love and fantasy, but it's just good sci-fi, either grounded sci-fi or big crazy sci-fi that just gets my juices going.
Do you have a go-to? Like for me, I can turn back to like the Back to the Future films, just for like it's it's a nice glass of milk and some warm cookies for me.
I
It's
thought
like
you were going to say Ghostbusters.
I did too.
Look, Ghostbusters 2. Absolutely. But like I think it's connection because my oldest, he's 14, right? And he loves the Back to the Future movies. And like he discovered them on his own. So now it's like something we both have in common. It's just like, hey, we're having a crappy day. What do you want to do? Back to the Future? Yes.
Absolutely. And good writing. That's the other thing where people, often the word genre, some people think, oh, that just means, B movie.
Right.
But like the best writing is in these genre films. And if you're looking at the box office, if you look at the top 20 grossing films, something like 18 of them are considered genre, sci-fi, fantasy, or like action. So, genre films can be... Yeah.
I find it very dismissing that, anyone would look at these movies and say there's no depth to them. Sure, there's spectacle. There's spectacle. You're going to need that much spectacle to get into the billions of dollars. But I challenge anyone to watch, like, Avengers Endgame after going through the entirety of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and not feeling emotions, not saying that's a great story. That's cinema. I don't get that mentality.
Yeah, it is strange. I think it's changing. I think as we've aged up, maybe this whole thing of being a geek or a nerd or something when we were kids, or you collect comics, now it's like that is the mainstream. So
Yeah.
what we thought was niche is now mainstream, and like those other things still exist. And Scorsese, who I'm, amazing filmmaker, I love.
Who I thought of too.
But he'll say this thing about what is cinema. I think that was maybe taken a little bit the wrong way. What was he trying to say? But like cinema or film or storytelling can be anything. And when it can be anything, it can be anything. It can be Star Wars. It can be a whole new original idea. It can be creatures. It's actually exciting, especially when there's this Trojan horse to it, that there's a theme buried in that is teaching us something. Like whether it's an Australian film called The Babadook. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah.
What was that really like? It's a horror film, sure, but it's really about like postpartum depression or something. It's like this deep thematic, which a lot of people might not have recognized during it. But I love that when there's something deeper to our storytelling.
Good sci-fi and horror, I think, hand in hand, both have to have something that hits you on a subconscious level. Otherwise, it's just slasher. Like, you can watch a slasher movie and forget it when you walk out. But yeah, something like, what if I watched Cobweb? It wasn't even that great of a movie, but Cobweb had something to it.
Till the end.
Good, okay.
Yeah, till that very last
Till the
scene.
very end.
That's
No spoilers.
Because modern horror doesn't know how to stick the goddamn landing.
No.
quite often a setup for the next one.
Uh-huh.
I don't mind if it's an action movie, if it's Marvel. But come on, horror movies.
All right. Philip,
Wrap it.
Philip as a writer, right? So we write our own skits and we have a comic book. And I love the world building, character creating process of it all. But one of my side gigs is also an editor for people, for two well-known magazines. And I feel terrible sometimes doing my job. Because, like, I know what it's like. I know you put all this effort into it and all of that. And you're just like, yes. And you hand it off. And the editor's like, sorry, man. Cut. This sucks. Do it again. As the writer of the book and handing it off to so many artists, was there ever a point where, like, you hit that guilty feeling of being like, I know you spent time in this, but, like,
Well, in this book, no, I don't.
That's
think
great.
So. I felt the collaboration was really there, and I'm kind of, I don't know if generous is the right word, but I'm very open to work with new ideas, and they come up with this. In fact, these artists just nailed it every time, and there might have been one or two things I'm like, oh, maybe just tweak this visual, but I just let them do their thing, and I come in with very, a solid script, so they know. But I also work as a script editor as well, and I think sometimes the tricky thing is finding out what the writer is trying to say as well, because sometimes we don't know. I think sometimes we write innately, and that's great. The theme becomes apparent throughout the process, and I even know filmmakers who they're finding it in the filming, which I get scared about, because I like to. I come from a background in science, and I like to really know what I'm doing before I kind of embark, so then I can do all these seeding and setups and payoffs and even subtle things that people might not get first read. So, but I get it. I get that it can be tricky and cutting your own work even, but it's also the purpose of a better outcome and a cleaner, more access to your audience. So I think editors do God's work.
You take time in between, a good amount of time in between writing something and going back and proofing it, or do you just jump back into it and scan? Because there's obvious that, okay, I've got grammatical errors here, blah, 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 but there's after a certain amount of time, your perspective changes and you're like, wait, what was I trying to say here? This is an absolute mess. Like, do you find either one?
Yeah, I rewrite. I'm always writing. Often, and this is a little secret, sometimes when I'm handing in a draft to producers or whoever, I've rewritten that thing twice, maybe three times. It's my first draft, but I sometimes do this thing, and I don't encourage writers to do this. If you're writing a big, like a feature, I'm often rewriting as I go. Like my next day, I'll go back and start from the start again and be tweaking until I get to my next scenes that I haven't written. So I'll be rewriting all the time. And that's what the old adage, writing is rewriting. You're always improving, cutting, fixing, and you catch yourself. You do things where you're going, suddenly, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, why did I say suddenly? All right, let's fix that. Let's make it more character. And that's the thing. I would be embarrassed to hand an actual first draft to anyone because that's not writing. Writing is us, honing it, making it tighter. Yeah. So I think I do give myself time in between, but I'm also doing it at the same time.
I mean, that makes sense. You can put the thoughts on the page initially, but they're not formed. They're gobbledygook half the time. They need to be massaged.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We went over the nerd stuff. We didn't go over any food stuff.
It's true.
We usually do food stuff. At least like 3 minutes. We didn't even ask you where you're located.
Oh, I'm in Australia. I'm in far North Australia, a place called Darwin. I was over in LA a lot, but then the pandemic allowed us to stay where I am, and Zoom became a thing. We can be talking with you guys and watching your awesome interviews as well. It's really we love where we live, and there might be a time where we move again, but at this moment, everything's working pretty well for us.
Okay, so the pizza question might be tricky. I don't know if pizza culture is huge down under. Oh, I said down under. I feel like a douche saying down under.
No, do it. I love it.
It's cool. It's not like someone comes to Jersey and is like, hey, yo, GTL. That makes my fucking skin crawl. I'm not going to lie.
No, I think Australians secretly, we like it when anyone's talking about us in any weird way. We'll downplay it. We'll be like, yeah, whatever, no worries. But we kind of go, yeah, go Australia.
Well, thank you and Australia in general for Bluey.
You're welcome.
I'm a single kind of adult. I definitely have no kids that I know of, and I'll still watch Bluey.
Really?
Yeah, Bluey's great.
I don't put it on constantly, but like there's a few episodes when his kid was watching it that I almost started crying in a room full of people because of that damn show.
Yep.
Beautiful. That's the whole secret. And I will say this. We have in Australia, because of Sesame Street or whatever, young kids will sometimes have a bit of an American accent, or they say Z instead of Z, things like that. And now I know some American friends whose kids now are sometimes doing Australian accents because they watch so much Bluey.
And the terminology, too. Like, they don't get into the crazy over-the-top stuff, but there's plenty of terminology from down there that
I love it.
I'm picking up on because of that show. I mean, and I watched Crocodile Dundee as a kid.
I
picked up a lot of stuff.
I love it.
All right, so anybody have anything else on the top of their heads? Oh, look, we didn't get pizza. Fuck, I didn't get the pizza.
Oh, pizza, yeah, that's right.
So not really known for pizza down there, but while you were here, did you ever try the horrendousness out Midwest?
I had amazing pizza in LA. I have to say that.
Oh yeah, but look, you got some quality craftsmanship out in California.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Pizza is a big thing here, but I feel like we have a lot of that, Domino's, those takeaway sort of pizzas.
Yeah.
And then you have the homemade sort of pizzas. And in LA, the pizza. One thing I never tried was the Chicago deep dish pizza, which sort of scares me a little.
Controversial.
Is it just sauce?
It's controversial. It is good.
It's bread soup from my perspective.
No.
No, if you get a quality Chicago style, it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's all about the sauce. That's what it's all about. Is a rich, hearty sauce on there.
It's good.
I mean, I'll give anything a go. I like, and I'm one of those guys who, pineapple, chuck it on. Whatever you've got, I'll eat whatever is on that pizza.
Fundamentally, I'm not against a Hawaiian pizza. Like, everyone has their right, but I wouldn't. I don't. I like ham that much, and I don't want to eat pineapple. I don't eat things that are trying to eat me back.
Is that the pineapple or the ham in that equation?
There's an enzyme in pineapple that, tries to that eats flesh.
It's fine. I eat pineapple all the time.
Yeah, do you brush right after? You should.
No.
You should.
No, I'm scared.
Yeah, look it up. I could be talking bullshit. I could be talking meme nonsense, but I'm pretty okay, I learned it in a meme, but it was one of those ones that I trusted.
I know
That's my next horror film.
Yeah,
that would be great.
the enzyme.
Philip, that's an invite. I think if you're ever out on the East Coast, we're gonna have to get together and get you some solid pizza.
All right, I'm there. Hey, I might be there next year.
Nice.
New York, I mean, New Jersey, you get to that pretty. That's just across the bay or something from New York, right?
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Easy, I'll be there.
I look at the city plenty of times. Not from my house, but
Oh, fancy
not too
town.
far from my house. So yeah, we're a hop, skip, and a jump. Definitely like to have you back on. We can just talk about whatever. We could pick a specific topic, like Star Wars or whatever. If you're a modern hater or a modern lover,
Star Trek.
yeah, sure, that too.
Yeah.
But anyway,
A half hour flew, man. Like,
can you throw out your socials or whatever you're trying to hype today?
Dude, I'm not even. I kind of am, but I'm not really on socials, and I don't care about that. But I will say, wildnorthcomics.com. Go check out the other things, but also Future Tales there, and also Amazon. You can get Future Tales on Amazon.
All right. That's important. Let the people know where to get things that's being sold. We don't really have time right now because we're about to get cut off to do the regular spiel, so we'll just end it the way we do every other show, like literally the very end of the show. It's a phrase my stupid brother used to say, fuck bye. Fuck bye.
fuck bye.
Because of the end of civilization, the Clamp Cable Network now leaves the air. We hope you have enjoyed our programming, but more importantly, we hope you have enjoyed life.